He says he's reaching out to anyone with a vote and an axe to grind. Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson, the former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, is no stranger to the race for the Oval Office. He's run before as a Republican and then as the 2012 Libertarian candidate. He's making another attempt for the presidency. He's again seeking the Libertarian Party's presidential nomination. You're going to sue to be involved in the debates.
Right now, we have sued the Presidential Debate Commission. The contention that if you're on the ballot in enough states to mathematically be elected president, that you should be included in the general election debates.
Logical.
And in 2016, the Libertarian Party will be on the ballot in all 50 states, so the Libertarian Party is the third party.
You don't have the nomination yet.
I don't, Larry, and that's a process just like Democrats and Republicans, and I hope to be the Libertarian nominee.
What's your outlook on the current campaign?
The biggest issues facing this country, the fact that we continue to spend more money than what we take in, that we should balance the federal budget. The ramifications of continuing to spend more money than what we bring in are going to be disastrous. It's going to be at some point a bond market collapse, and that's going to be ugly. I also believe in individual freedom and liberty and the personal responsibility that goes along with that.
But what do you make of Mr. Trump and Senator Sanders?
Well, what you have in this country is you've got the Republican nominee that is attracting the 30% far right. You have the Democrat nominee that is attracting the 30% far left. And when 45% of Americans now declare themselves as independents, you end up with a solid 30% representation by the two major parties. And at the heart of that, it really is the Presidential Debate Commission. They do collude with one another to make sure that no one else has a say when it comes to the general election.
A farce.
It's not fair. It's not a fair process. Our contention, like I say, is that if you're on the ballot in enough states to mathematically be elected, shouldn't you be included in the presidential debates? And Larry, there's no guarantee of anything that comes of the presidential debates, but you can't be elected unless you're in the presidential debates. Can't happen.
What do you think has caused this unease, upheaval? What do you think has caused the fact that a Trump and a Sanders could have 30% in each party?
Having been in New Hampshire and having been in the Midwest running as a Republican, what I saw was 30% of Republicans really believe that the scourge of the earth has to do with Mexican immigration. And I was the voice out there saying that that's not the case, that immigration is really a good thing, that we should make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to be able to get a work visa, and that a wall across the border is just crazy. I can't tell you how many times in New Hampshire I said, well, let's just build a wall across the border with New Hampshire and Canada, to which the response was, well, that's crazy. There's no issue with Canadians coming over the border. And I'm saying, well, you don't believe me that in New Mexico it's really not an issue, that the issue is there are jobs in the United States that U.S. citizens don't want to take, and the line to get across the border is not a moving line, so they come across illegally. It's kind of a government-caused situation.
Why did you leave the Republican Party?
Of all the candidates in 2012, none of them were socially liberal. The notion of allowing a person to make personal choices regarding their own lives and the freedom and the liberty that all of us have, and I'm a firm believer in that, and the personal responsibility that goes along with that. Also, I do believe in a balanced budget. I really do believe that there's going to be serious issues if we continue to spend more money than what we take in. And there is a real terrorist threat out there. But I do believe that our military interventions have made this situation worse. It's not the cause for the real terrorist threat that exists out there, but we can address it without putting boots on the ground and without dropping bombs. Let's contain it over there.
When Norman Thomas ran for president in 1932 on the Socialist Party ticket, they had 19 planks on their platform. All are now law. So why are we shocked that a socialist candidate is getting 30% of the vote on his side? We like a lot of socialism ideas. Public schools, overtime pay, health care plans, Socialist.
I want everybody to get online and take the isidewith.com test. Answer 36 questions, and then you get paired up with the presidential candidate most in line with your views. Well, right now, I think Bernie Sanders fits that bill, not on the fiscal side, but on the social side. And I just submitted yesterday, so hopefully my name will come up on that. But I'm challenging everybody to get online, take that test, and see if, in fact, I'm not the one most in line with your views. Now, that's one thing. Another thing is to actually, can you be competent as President of the United States? Can you actually follow through on what it is that you're proposing? Yeah, I wouldn't be here, Larry, if that wasn't my history and what I believed I wouldn't be able to accomplish.
Why shouldn't the Libertarian Party be in the debates? Why, Gary, since you know this is a two-party structure, even if you win your lawsuit and you're on the debates, the odds are multitude against you.
But at least there's a chance. I get that all the time, Larry, and it's a legitimate question. You know, hey, you really don't stand a chance. Well, you definitely don't stand a chance if you're not in the game.
So why do you run?
At the end of the day, in the case of all of our lives, we reflect back on our lives and what did we do with our lives? Well, in my case, I am going to definitely be able to reflect that I've been the voice of reason throughout all of this.
And you remain a libertarian. And a lot of people will say, I like half, liberals like half, and conservatives like half.
Yeah, which is where most people are in this country. If you were to define it, if you were to Wikipedia classical liberal, I'm a classical liberal, which is being fiscally conservative and socially liberal, which, like I say, take the I side with test, which 30 million Americans have, and I end up to be the next president based on just being in line with what most Americans think.
You got a campaign video in which you say you're reaching out to anyone with a vote and an axe to grind. What do you mean, axe to grind?
It's just that people are so upset with the establishment. And having run for governor of New Mexico and having been elected as governor of New Mexico, I'd never been involved in politics before. I know,
you're a businessman, right?
In business, promising to bring a common sense business approach to state government. And I think I was very successful at doing that. And I think, really, that that's what people want. They don't want to have anything to do with the establishment. I was not an establishment. I may have vetoed more bills as governor of New Mexico than the other 49 governors in the country combined. I mean, I really did say no to the status quo. It really is a rigged game. Crony capitalism is alive and well. Interests pay for special interests, for special tax treatment, and they get it. And I saw that up front, and having never been involved in politics before, not being for sale, look, I just said no to all that stuff. I made a difference.
What happened to moderate Republicans?
What happened to them?
Yes.
What happened to them?
John Kasich is fairly close. Not close, but fairly.
If you take Kasich's views on drugs, for example, legalization of marijuana, he's absolutely opposed. Since 1999, I've advocated the legalization of marijuana, which just is a personal choice. You may disagree with a person's personal choice, but is it criminal to smoke marijuana if you're not doing any harm to anyone else? And I do believe that California, come November, is going to vote to legalize recreational marijuana, and I think that this whole issue will be in our rearview mirror here in the years to come, with California taking a big lead in that.
Republicans say they're conservative, Democrats say they're progressive. What do libertarians say?
Take the best of both worlds. That's what I say, is take the best of both worlds. Look, we care about people. Shouldn't people be able to make their own choices? A woman's right to choose. It goes on and on. Civil liberties. I think that historically Democrats have been better when it comes to civil liberties. Historically, Republicans have been better when it comes to fiscal issues, but not of late. Look, they want to spend more money on military, but they want to cut it from social programs, from health care. Look, it's got to be a balanced approach when it comes to government spending with regard to everything. I'm opposed to cutting the funding or eliminating funding to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood has to take cuts just along with everybody else, or we're going to find ourselves in a really perilous situation.
What do you make of intelligence officials now saying that an attack by ISIS on U.S. soil this year is likely?
The threat when it comes to radical Islam is based on Sharia law. What we need to be against is Sharia law. Sharia law is absolutely 180 degrees from the U.S. Constitution. It has no place. It does not allow for women's rights. And so the threat is going to be homegrown, and the threat really is going to derive from Sharia law and its practices. Recognize that Sharia law is politics, that Islam is religion. We are always in favor of freedom of religion, but we cannot support in any way politics of Sharia law, which, like I say, are just antithetical to the U.S. Constitution. So contain what's happening in the world overseas, cut off the funding to Sharia law, and that's what we can do. That's what the Emirates have done. That's what Saudi Arabia has done.
If you are the Libertarian Party nominee, what opponents do you expect to face?
There are 25 candidates for president in the Libertarian Party. People don't understand. There are 160 Democrats running for president. There are 130 Republicans running for president. So it is a process.
Being logical, let's say you're the nominee. Who do you think the Democratic and Republican nominees will be?
I do believe it's going to be Hillary at the end of the day on the Democrat side, and it looks like Donald Trump is going to be the nominee on the Republican side. When it comes to Donald Trump, I get the lure. It's the same pitch I made to New Mexicans. Look, I'm a business guy. I've never been involved in politics before. I'm going to apply that same business logic to state government and watch just how well things run. Well, I never said anything as remotely crazy as deporting 11 million illegal immigrants. I never said anything as remotely crazy as building a fence across the border. Look, he said he wants to kill the families of Muslim terrorists. Who's going to arbitrate over that whole situation? It goes on and on. He says he's free market, and the next sentence, and I'm going to force Apple to make their iPhones and iPads in the United States. Hillary, is there anything, anybody that Hillary hasn't promised everything to, and the spending that will go along with that? I mean, nothing's going to change with Hillary elected. Hillary's the epitome of establishment.
You think you're going to win your lawsuit?
As I said earlier, there's no chance of winning this lawsuit if you don't file. And in this case, Bruce Fein has filed this lawsuit. Bruce Fein's claim to fame is that he helped bring Nixon down in Watergate. I have to tell you, having him writing this up, we're filing on the grounds of the Sherman Act, that politics is a business. In my opinion, not much of a stretch when you
saying it's antitrust to keep
everybody else out other than Democrats and Republicans. They sign agreements with one another
so
that
who
they
should
won't
be in the debate? Candidates on the ballot in all 50 states?
Candidates on the ballot in enough states to garner 270 electoral votes. So in 2012, that would have included the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. So we also filed this suit on behalf of the Green Party.
You got any chance of winning it? You go before a federal commission that is Republican and Democrat.
When you read the argument from Bruce Fein, it reads very, very well, and I don't see how it doesn't end up having a lot of merit. I don't see how it doesn't become kind of national entertainment on the documents that the Democrats and the Republicans sign. We think that the media probably signs documents also saying that there will be an exclusion.
Are you in the marijuana business?
I was the president CEO of Cannabis Sativa for a year and a half, and I did that, Larry, because I really believe that legalizing marijuana makes the world a better place. On the medicinal side, these products directly compete with opioids, with painkillers, with antidepressants, and marijuana products don't kill anybody. On the legal prescription side, these drugs kill statistically 100,000 people a year. And I have always maintained, Larry, that legalizing marijuana will lead to less overall substance abuse because it's so much safer than everything else that's out there, starting with alcohol. The campaign to legalize marijuana in Colorado was a campaign based on marijuana being safer than alcohol. The campaign in California is treat marijuana like wine. Well, it's not like wine. It's not nearly as dangerous as alcohol.
It's going to be legal everywhere.
It is going to be legal everywhere. And everybody talks about also the tax revenue, that this is such a big panacea, that it's a wonderful thing. The tax revenue gets dwarfed by the savings in law enforcement, the courts, and the prisons. Let's stop putting people in jail for people making personal choices that don't harm anyone other than arguably the person involved. And whenever you cross over that line, whenever you cross over the line to potentially doing harm or doing harm, that's always going to be illegal. Always.
Should it be discussed in the presidential race?
It should be, and of course it's not.
Oh.
In 1999, as governor of New Mexico, advocated legalizing marijuana. At that time, I was the highest elected official to do so. Larry, that's the good news. The bad news is, to this day, 17 years later, I am still the highest elected official to ever advocate on the part of legalizing marijuana. No governor, no U.S. senator, no congressman or woman is advocating legalization of marijuana, and yet 58% of Americans now say they want marijuana legalized. Boy, that is one big disconnect. But that's the disconnect between people and the politicians that we elect.
Why would they be afraid to say it if it is the popular thing?
It's crazy. It's crazy that there is that big of disconnect. I can't think of any other topic, any other issue that we have where there is that big a disconnect. And talking about term limits, there is a silver bullet to this whole system, and that is term limits. Yeah. With term limits, I think politicians would do the right thing as opposed to whatever it takes to get reelected. And that is really the big problem, is that people get in these politically elected jobs and they find themselves really enamored with all the pomp and circumstance, and they'll do anything to get reelected. Enact term limits. I think that changes the system in a really big way.
Well said, Gary. Great.
Always,
Governor.
Gary. Always. Thank you.
I want to thank Gary Johnson, the former governor of New Mexico, who might well again be the Libertarian Party candidate in 2016.